Just real quick, the nature of the event tonight is that everyone here, who I will introduce in a moment, has been given 15 pages from the book, and no more of the book, so I'm pretty sure no one has read the full book. They've just read their pages. And we're all here to gather around the campfire and tell from memory what happens in the story of Broken Sugar. Story of Broken Sugar. It's going to be a lot of spoilers, obviously, but memory is its own fiction, so tonight. Just a real quick series of introductions. Participating tonight, we have Naamen Tilahun, Jenn Yin, Allan Hough, Jenn Yin, Eli Horowitz, Mauro Cardenas, Peggy Lee, Khong, Karp, Traetto, Ryan Brent, and Fleitas. Thank you all for doing this. I know there's a lot to ask. I'm really excited to see what you remember. Let's go. All right. I don't know why. Come on over here with me. I'll sit over here and talk to you from here. So this. Why did I put myself first? That was so stupid. So the story begins with two characters, Broken Sugar, who are brothers, and they're sitting on a bridge. They are contract killers. They've just finished a job. It was a fairly difficult job, so they're out of bullets, they're out of powder, they've lost their horses in some way that we never quite find out how, and they're returning to town to take a bath, they get paid. They return to town after weeks in the woods to find many of the buildings razed, a lot of new faces. They don't know what's going on. They see one building that is obviously of some importance. They go there. They arrange to have an audience with the new boss, who's a very tiny man sitting in a very large chair. They have a somewhat tense conversation. Trust me, it's super tense. And at the end of it, the boss's thug sort of attacks them, and they take him out very easily. They don't kill him, they just beat him up, and then the boss decides to let them take a bath. While they're in the bath, a lot of the men are harassing Sugar, and they notice that the thug is there bleeding in the bath, so they realize they have to escape. They beat up the thug, again, not of beating up, out of blood. They escape into the woods. They don't know what to do. They haven't eaten, they don't have any weapons. They decide to wait. They go to sleep eventually, and when they wake up, there is a nude boy stuck between them. And they don't know where he came from. He doesn't know where he came from. They ask him a series of questions such as, who are you? What are you doing here? Where did you come from? He doesn't have any answers. Who taught you to speak like we do? He has no answers for this. Sugar starts intimidating him really aggressively, preparing to kill him. Brooke takes some pity on the boy, and ultimately gets Sugar to sort of lay off. And they decide to go hunt a deer.
Okay, so while hunting a deer, the boy asks Brooke why Sugar doesn't seem to like him. And the response is that he doesn't trust you. And the boy's like, well, that's fair. Brooke ends up killing the deer and skinning it. And then that night, as they fall asleep, they hear people approaching. Brooke and Sugar disappear, and the boy is left alone to crouch behind a tree as 4 men come through their campsite hunting another man and beating him. They end up stealing the deer that Brooke has killed, and then they slaughter the man they've been hunting and cut him out like meat. That's what happens. And take both the man meat and the deer meat with them as they leave. The boy is rejoined by Brooke and Sugar, whose stuff has also been burned by this 4-man group. Sugar's ready to let it go and move on, but Brooke is a little too bitter and angry over losing the deer, so they decide to hunt the 4 men down. They track them through the woods and set the boy aside while they slaughter them by poking out their eyes and stabbing them in the kidneys. One of the last men, who's been stabbed in the kidneys and is bleeding and obviously weakening, turns to them and says, "You may have killed me, but there will be more men coming." Then they watch him die. And then they go off. Oh, wait. So after they're all dead, the boy is asked by Brooke to pry out the teeth of all the dead bodies because that's their ritual to bury them, so they're buried with their souls. The boy is finally convinced by Brooke and Sugar to do this, even though he's reluctant, because they say it will be a blessing for their dead bodies and it'll be helping us out. And it seems like the boy feels guilty for not being able to help them out. Then as they wander, he notices a blackbird and attempts to pecking at their food and attempts to kill it with a rock. He manages to injure the wing and then decides to try and kill it with his bare hands, where he crushes the skull, and Brooke and Sugar watch, and finally Sugar asks them to stop torturing the animal and cuts its head off with a knife and flings the body into the woods. The boy goes off to find the body and is shocked to discover there's not enough meat on the blackbird for any use, so he just tosses the body aside. Brooke ends up playing with the head a little bit with his foot, and then they move on.
That's crazy. More violent. Okay, so at this point, there's a boy who I thought was named Bird, and there's Brooke and Sugar, and Brooke's like, I'm gonna stay here, you go do your thing. So Sugar takes Bird, and they walk through the woods, and Bird falls on the ground, and sees that there's all these like small rocks, stones on the ground, and then he realizes they're teeth, and he's like, are we on a graveyard? And then Sugar's like, we're always on a graveyard. So then they get to this, they keep walking, and Bird's like whimpering and crying, and Sugar's like, stop doing that, you're gonna want to stop doing that. And then they get to this old guy in the woods who's wearing a suit, and the man in the suit is like, hey Sugar, I see you're carrying something. And Sugar's like, yeah, this is my friend Bird. And he's like, no, but you got a baby. And then Bird's like, I'm not a baby. And he's like, I'm not talking to you. Well, you get the vibe that he says that. He doesn't actually say that. So then Sugar's like, what do I do with this guy Bird? And the old guy's like, I don't know, I can't help you. So Sugar's like, that sucks. And then they walk all the way back. And on the way, Sugar's getting stressed out about this bird, and so he has this idea when they're like back at the camp. He starts beating on Bird, and great idea. He's like, if you don't tell me who you are and where you came from, I'm gonna like kill you and do all this like freaky stuff to you. And Bird's like, I don't know where I came from. I don't know who I am. And then Brooke appears out of nowhere, and he's like, you should just kill this guy, this Bird. And Bird's like, not saying anything. He's not saying who he's from, or who he is, or where he's from. And then Sugar's like, okay, I'm just gonna punch you really hard, and he passes out. And then it turns out he's not dead, and he wakes up, and he's by this campfire. And Sugar's like, I didn't kill you. And Bird's like, why'd you try to kill me? And he's like, well, you're just lucky I didn't, or something. And then and then he's like, and then Bird's like searching for a rock. He's like, I'm gonna throw a rock at this guy. Can't find a rock. He finds a stick. Tries to hit Sugar. It disintegrates, and Sugar stabs him in the gut with a knife. I know. and then Sugar's like, what's that sound? It turns out a bunch of horses are gonna trample everyone. But Sugar climbs a tree, and Brooke kind of gets trampled. And then after the horses go away, Brooke ends up being fine, but the bird guy is gone, and same with the knife that's in his gut. And then Brooke's like, thanks a lot, you really effed this up. And then Sugar's like, I know. And then he's like, but you're my bro, right? And he's like yeah. And then they get this fight, and then they have this like, awkward walk through the woods for a couple of days. And then they get into a town finally. And they go to this town, they go to this bar. This bartender's like, what would you like? And they're like, house wine. And so he gives them house wine. And Sugar doesn't drink the wine. And, but before that, he's like, what's up with this bar? And the bartender's like, no one really drinks here. Everyone likes to play baseball and play games. And then Sugar's like, you know what? I'm not gonna drink either, even though I ordered this house wine, but Brooke totally drinks. And then afterwards, they go out into the street, and Brooke punches Sugar. He's like, what's up with you? You're being weird. And Sugar's like, that really hurt. I'm carrying something. And then you're like, maybe it's pregnancy, but maybe this guy was it. And then they go to a motel or something. They go to like a hotel, and Sugar's like, could I have a room? And then the lady's like, it's gonna be twice the price for 2 of you. And then they're like, well, shouldn't we just get 2 rooms then? And then maybe they should.
So they're trying to get a room in this place, and I don't think they have any money or anything. And so the innkeeper is skeptical of them, and she's maybe trying to turn them away. And so Brooke says, okay, well, if you want to do us a favor, how about we play a little game? And she seems like maybe she's into it. He said, all right. And he pulls out a knife. They have a knife at this point. And he says, all right, let's play this game. If my brother, I'm going to go stand against this wall, and if my brother can throw a knife at the wall and hit the wall closer to me than you can without hitting me, then you have to give us a room. And the innkeeper is like, okay. And so Brooke goes over and gets against the wall, and Sugar goes behind the desk where she's at, where the innkeeper's at. The innkeeper says, all right, but I'm going first. It's my place. I'm going first. So Sugar gives her a knife. She tests its weight a little bit, and then chucks it at him. And hits like a foot away. It's pretty impressive. It's just like an old lady innkeeper. And Brooke says, next time you'll announce that you're throwing, please. So then Sugar takes a knife. Sugar says, I'm gonna throw it. Throws it, gets real close, like a couple inches. And the innkeeper lady says, all right, but we're best of 2. And what can I do? So the innkeeper lady throws it again, even closer, super close. And Sugar, second time, right up against his neck. Like, it's super close. And then the innkeeper lady says, all right, best of 3. And they're like, fine. And, so she takes the knife and she says, all right, I'm throwing. And it goes straight into his thigh. I don't know where they were aiming before. And she says, all right, fine, you guys win. But just as that happens, all of a sudden, gunfire. All through the walls behind them. And there's a posse there. A posse arrives, and they're looking for Brooke and Sugar. And the innkeeper seems to know them, and they argue about it a little bit. She was like, I totally have this under control. And, but the guys haul the boys off and put them in a couple of different, am I taking way too long? I'm only like 3 pages in. It's really good. It's really good. All right, I'll go real fast. So then, Well, then we cut back to the little boy Bird, and he's in a cave or something by himself, and something's chewing on him, and then gets rescued, and by this nice family who play instruments, and like it seems cool, and they say, what happened to you? And he was like, these contract killers killed my parents, and they had my mom's head in a box. And then it goes back. Then it goes back to Brooke and Sugar there, and it's just Brooke on a stagecoach, and he said these posse guys were being mean to him, and he's like, "What's up? What are you guys doing to me?" And they said. He says, "Where's Sugar?" And they're like, "You know Sugar is pregnant, right?" And he's like, "What?"
Okay, so so in the wagon, there's a commotion, and the driver of the wagon's like, "Quick, get this guy Brooke into the carriage bench." So they throw him in there, and there's a lot of detail about the wood of this bench, the way the bench is made, and how claustrophobic it is, and Brooke's like freaking out, and there's a lot of noise, and it's super, super loud. It's louder than the Battle of Creation, according to Colin. So it's like, what the hell is going on? I'm stuck in this thing, and he's trying to break through the imprisonment, the wood box, and the wood is going outwards, and there's all this sound, and finally it kind of subsides, and he finally manages to break through, and he pokes outside the wagon, and all the horses have ran off, and all of his captors have been shot. So he's like walking around, and he's trying to like, survey the situation. Everyone's dead except for one person, Jim, and Jim's like, "No matter what you do, we're gonna find you." And so Brooke is like, yeah, whatever. And then he crushes Jim's throat with his boot, and then puts in the silence. And then Brooke is like, kind of like, "Oh shit, I better hurry before these guys come back, whoever these marauders were." So he's like getting wood. It's really smart. He gets wood from the wagon, and he finds a leather sack to fill with water. Anyway, so there's that. And then cue to the scene with Sugar. Sugar is being harassed right now by a bad guy, his captor, and the captor's going on and on about how Sugar is a beast and like terrible person, and how Sugar's baby is gonna like be better off as horse food, and how his baby is gonna be the kind of creature that licks salt off the barn walls, and all this is going on and on, needling Sugar, and then finally the guy's like, like normally what we would do is we would have our way with you, but because you're so weird and you're such a beast, like even if I had 10 extra miles of thick skin, I wouldn't climb inside of you. So that's it. We'll put that to rest for a bit. Anyway, so you get the sense. Sugar's really uncomfortable, and Sugar's day is kind of like thinking about Brooke and thinking about how fucked up all of this is. Okay, so then we go to the next scene, and we introduce Bird. We reintroduce Bird, and Bird is missing a hand now.
What?
So Bird is hanging out with Mary, who is this 12-year-old, and she has a lot of stories about animals, and she's actually she's a real chatty Cathy, but he likes us because he finds her to be a really good companion, because she just talks and tells stories about animals, and they're like chilling out in this field, and they're admiring these two mild ponies. I don't know what mild ponies is. Anyway, okay, I gotta go faster. All right, so anyway, and then talking about grasshoppers, and Bird has to learn about Mary's chores. She's terrible at the chores. She's really sloppy. She's supposed to feed horses. She doesn't do a good job. She's a good girl. Back to Brooke. Brooke is really struggling. He's by himself. He's kind of freaking out, but he's badass. So he's gonna be chill about this. It's cold. It's the desert. He doesn't know what to do. Stuff like that, and then back to, no, wait, hold on, sorry. My section had like 5 different parts to it. And anyway, he's looking at the stars, and he's trying to figure out why he doesn't know shit about stars, because stars are really important. And he's just freaking out. He's thinking about who his captors could have been, like, and he starts reflecting about how funny it would be if he died in the desert alone because he's killed so many people, and he's speculating who's responsible for all of this. And then back to Bird. Sorry, I'm almost there. Bird and Mary are hanging out with Mary's family, and Mary's mom is like, Martha is super stern and kind of like rigid and really kind of repressed or whatever. And she wants Mary to cut her hair off before she looks like a heathen. So Mary's dad or guardian takes her out and chops off her braids on a tree stump, which is really dramatic. And then Mary and Bird have a little funeral for her braids.
After this funeral, I guess Mary and Bird get to talking, and Mary's trying to ask Bird some of the questions that I guess we probably all have. Where Bird came from, how he ended up there. Bird's not really too interested in talking about it, seems. He's given some vague answers. His parents seem to have been farmers, but basically he sort of says not now. Now we're back to Brooke and Sugar, who I guess are reunited, clip-clopping along. Brooke's kind of musing back on the not conquest, but this scarred southerner who they went and robbed and whatever. The fun twist about this one is they took all his stuff, took all his horses, but let him go. So he felt like he was getting away, but they were actually just lingering a little behind him for days, I guess, until he just died on his own. That was Sugar's idea, and I guess that was a cool idea. Pretty happy about the horses too. Now we're back on the farm, which again is like pretty peaceful and nice contrast, and but John, the patriarch of this family, is slaughtering a pig. Bird is sort of helping, but there's a lot of blood, there's a lot of stench, there's some entrails. It's fairly intense, and Bird faints. And is pretty embarrassed about this. Everyone's telling him it's no big deal. Bird's saying, no, I want to help. They say there's a lot of other ways to help, don't worry about it. So they kind of reach some detente on that topic. Now we're back on old Brooke and Sugar, just kind of further musing about past events. One time they were attacking this guy, and he actually had a cannon, which would seem really good. They didn't even realize he did, but then he kind of disappeared for a second, and they sort of just went to the house, and then finally he managed to fire the cannon at where they were standing like 5 minutes ago. They were standing where they were standing next to him, and so they killed him. There's also, Brooke is getting pretty cranky at this point, and pretty horny. Just kind of musing on the nature of horniness. I'm musing on what kind of hole in the ground he would need to take care of that. So it goes. Finally, they're in the house, the whole family, back on the farm, and some bandits start circling the house, shooting their guns and whatnot. John says, I'll go outside and take care of this. He goes outside, and almost instantly they just shoot him. He's dead.
Oh my God.
Sorry, I didn't warn you about that. But it's pretty surprising for John, too. Martha, the mother of this family, and she just pulls out the rifle and goes, blow, 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 and then one guy runs, blow. Everyone's dead. She scoops up Bird. They go find Mary, who's picking flowers in the cemetery. And they go off.
So I was practicing the plot summary. I was going to practice the plot summary with my daughter. They were like this big, and quickly realized that was a mistake. Because the scene is about Sugar giving birth. And Sugar, as you probably know, is a man. I think it's a man, although it's called Sugar, which is fine, right? Yeah. And so this section is told from the point of view of a doctor. And it's a very introspective section, except for the fact that the doctor is a drunk, and he drinks a lot. And he was opposed to helping with the birth of Sugar's child because he felt that the child was likely to be a demon child, or the devil, or La Llorona, or Elasco. I mean, all these things. I don't know how you get the Spanish in there, but that was great. The doctor's bilingual. So he's from Mexico, I think. But anyway, so he's really worried about the child, being a devil child. And so, and meanwhile, he was really drunk. I already said that, but I'm saying it again because I am actually forgetting what happened next. I kill a little bit of time, tell you a little bit about my children. They're also called Sugar. Actually, then it turns out that the child is born, and it's not a devil child. It's a normal child. So far, the doctor says. Then there's a lot of shooting. Comes from somewhere, and then there's a lot of people who die, and then Sugar shoots a bunch of people too, and they all die, and that is the end of that section.
So Sugar is in jail, and she was the deputy, and he. So okay. So then the deputy so he has the gun trained on the deputy, and she's like, which way to the desert, which way to the woods? So the deputy goes, this is the way to the desert, and it's like red rocks and lizards. And this is the way to the woods, and it's like through the town. And then Sugar goes, great. And all the deputy notices that underneath his underclothes looks like a woman. And then Sugar goes, great, and then shoots him in the eye. And then, okay, scene 2. So then it's Martha, Mary, and Bert. And so Martha sees, so they've been on the floor because there's been shooting. And the innkeeper has been so kind to let them stay in the inn because there's been all these shootings. And then the innkeeper actually gets hit by an errant bullet. And so the innkeeper is dying and bleeding out in at the fireplace. But Martha, Mary, and Bert are still holding on, and they get up and they see that, okay, well, the guy, the killer, Sugar, is too far away. But I will shoot him when I get him in eyesight and shoot him in the back. And Mary's like, that's very cowardly. But then Martha's like, no, he's a killer. You know what? Let's not let him do his thing. I will shoot him in the back. So then they hide, and then, okay, so they're working this out, and then scene 3. So then, Brooke is near the stream, and he sees these beautiful longhorns who have these beautiful horns that are majestic but also kind of monstrous. And he sees this guy, and he's going to steal from him. But when he goes to this guy, he's like, oh wait, this is the guy who looks like the guy who stole my wife. And so he strangles him. And then when after he strangles him, he's like, do I strangle him because he stole my wife, or do I strangle him because this is part of my imperative, because I like strangling people and killing people? And he's like, yeah, no, that's just part of my thing. And he thinks back to the time when he also killed another person. And then he's like, yes, this is just part of what me and Sugar do. And I will share with Sugar most times about what I do, but this is something for me. When I strangle the guy with longhorns. Okay, scene 4. Is that scene 4? Okay, so scene 4. So Martha sees that, okay, there's shots ringing out, innkeeper is dead, I'm gonna put lace over her face. And then I have to take care of these kids. So she puts them in a vanity, and then she thinks about, where am I gonna hide? She sees closet, too obvious. And then she sees like underneath the table, too obvious too, not gonna work. So then she sees like, okay, there is a window. So she jumps out the window and she hangs out in the alleyway. But she hangs out in the alleyway and she has 2 kids there to take care of. She has Mary and she has the kid, Bert. And Mary's like, oh, there's spiders in here, what am I gonna do? Okay, so anyway, so she thinks that she's gonna, okay, I have to go kill this guy because I want to protect these kids. She goes around the side and then she sees him, and he actually is breaking, so he's walking through the town, like shooting people left and right, and then Sugar is, And then she goes, she sees him coming in, and then she sees him actually opening up the floorboards and picking up a baby. And then
he shoots into a hole, tucks the pistol inside of his pants, heads for the front door where Mary's standing with a rifle. But he's holding this baby, so Mary does not want to shoot at him, and he runs toward the stables. Mary decides to check on the children who are hiding in the bedroom, so she goes to the bedroom, sort of looks around and calls out. She finds Bird in the vanity. He has peed in his pants, and she asks him where Mary is. He's kind of like very shaken and doesn't answer in an appropriate way or helpful way, and so she finds Mary under the bed, puts Mary on top of the bed, and then she is basically like, do you guys know how to cook a chicken? And they say, well, and Mary says, yeah, you take out its feathers and you bathe it in butter and you bake it. And she's like, yeah, but do you know how to kill a chicken? And Bird says, well, we don't know his, I don't know, it just says the boy. But the boy says, yeah, is it kind of like killing a hog? And she says, yes, but easier. And so they're like, oh yeah, okay, so we know how to like cook, we know how to cook a chicken. And she says, do you know how to shoot someone? And they say, I guess so. She says, do you know how to, well, she's basically just trying to make sure that they're going to be okay on their own because she wants to go hunt down the murderer. And they sort of assure her that it's going to be okay. They ask if it's going to be safe, and she says, yes, you're safe, but stay hidden. She peeks into a hole. I don't know what kind of hole it is, but she peeks into a hole. There's a dead man there. He's wearing kind of nice clothes. And then she's like, I have to go after the killer. And they say, well, okay, so that's that for then. So after that, they're sort of like, oh, also she puts Bird into a dress because that's what she can find. Because he's wet himself, and so she needs to like replace his clothing, and he's in a dress. So after that, there's like a sort of flashback. It's about Bird, or it's about Brooke and Sugar's relationship and sort of their past. And so it's talking about how Brooke and Sugar are brothers, and up until a point, Sugar had they had just been raised as brothers. They had never known their mother. Their father was kind of this like rough guy, and they had just been raised as brothers. But at some point, when they like learned to shoot and learned to do other things, Sugar sort of started having like a different sort of figure and different body parts, and Brooke had these urges toward him that he didn't really didn't really act on them, but he felt them. And then it talks about their childhood, how it was rough, and then it talks about Sugar's first, which was like his first killing, I guess, and his first killing was killing his father in their white bedroom and killing him with a knife and then just like splattering all the blood everywhere. And they buried their father in an apple tree but did not otherwise clean up after the mess. And they just sort of lived in that house together. And one night, Sugar turned to Brooke and wanted to show Brooke what their father had done to Sugar in the nights when they were together. And they both participated in it. It's not sure, we don't know what it is, but it was a thing that they did together. And Brooke always felt that when they did this thing, Sugar might kill him, but he didn't really say anything about it. And he also just kind of felt like he would stop doing it after the last time they had done it. But he just always wanted to do it. And then, so they kept doing that. They just like lived sort of in peace and harmony, also doing it until the day that their house burned down. It just like, it caught on fire, started burning. Then they started taking these torches and then burned down the rest of the city and also killing people. Anyway, that's the backstory. And then it goes back to Martha, who is like, you know, like putting on her rifle, hopping onto a horse bareback, even though she doesn't like it, but she just got to do it. She's like, got to go find this person who she says like killed John, Bird's father, and she goes out in search of Sugar. Meanwhile, Sugar is ahead of her. The baby's crying. Sugar tries to give the baby a bunch of food. The baby spits it out, repulsed, and then Sugar puts it at Sugar's boob, and the baby sucks happily. And then I have a bunch of other stuff happens. The kids make some bread. They kill a chicken. They eat a chicken, and Martha is trailing after Sugar, finds Sugar at the campsite that he's made for himself. Sugar's not really sleeping, but Martha sees him and knows that she wants to kill him, decides she's going to shoot him in the back, and does, ultimately. Shoots him in the back a few times, then approaches him after he's like kind of pretty dead, and shoots him some more, and takes the baby, takes the baby, starts bringing him back to her horse. It starts to snow.
So Martha hops on this horse. She has the baby. The baby keeps trying to breastfeed. There's no milk. She lets the baby keep trying to breastfeed. She thinks it's the least she can do. She's trying to return the baby to her, to the baby's parents, who are. So meanwhile, Brooke falls in with some bandits. He sees them celebrating one evening. He comes up on them in the woods, and he joins them. They're totally easygoing. They're like, whatever, this guy seems cool, we don't care. He kills between 50 and 100 people during this time of hanging out with these bandits. He can't really remember most of them. He recalls a man who named Grot, who calls himself Grot because he likes how it sounds. And most of these marauders are pretty easygoing. They don't really, other than all of the murdering, of course, they don't really fight amongst themselves. They play a lot of cards. They take things as they come. Grot, however, loses his temper with this boy and mashes his eyes out with his thumbs, and the men retaliate by taking this man and hanging him. They then shoot the boy. Meanwhile, Bird is lining up bodies in the street in this town. Everybody in the town is dead. Mary is appalled by Bird's actions. She tries to get him to stop doing this, but he says that he has to do it. The bodies have ended up in terrible positions, and of course they will rot in the town in their dining rooms, which would be horrible. So he's pulling them out into the street. It is snowing, and he tells Mary that she has to dig some holes to bury these people. She doesn't want to do this, but again he tells her that she has to. They decide finally that they are just going to dig one big hole and put everybody in the hole. She asks Bird if he believes in ghosts. He says yes, because it's better to believe in them and not see them than to not believe them and have one rush upon you. Let's see what then happens. It's another meanwhile. We have a cut, and then. Sorry, I get camera shy. I'm trying not to, but it's right there. Bird. Okay, so the lining up bodies. We cut back to Martha on the horse. She's trying to get back. She pushes the horse until finally the horse gives. The horse just passes out in the snow. She realizes that she's been foolish in trying to pursue this person. That it was a selfish decision, and she finally and that she killed this person really without thinking about it. She had taken a knife from him. She uses the knife to cut open the horse, and she climbs inside of the horse with the baby, trying to stay warm because it's really snowing at this point, and she can't get any footing. She can't stay inside of the horse as hard as she tries to, and then we have another cut back to Brooke. Brooke is decides that he needs to leave these bandits. He's ready to go out on his own. He's sort of had enough of this whole thing. He approaches the idea by just saying that he wants to make some money digging. He hears that people can do that these days, and he doesn't really care about digging though. He just wants to do his own thing, and so he takes off.
Okay, so when my part starts, Brooke comes to, and, right, is it Brooke or Sugar? I don't know either. I'm certain it's Brooke, actually. Comes to, okay, Brooke comes to, and there's this angel hovering above him that has rotting hair. Or maybe she's a ghost, or maybe she's a person, he's not sure. She's taking care of him, and she's taking care of him not in a loving way, but like she's done this before. And he's thinking there's something wrong with her, but I don't want to know what it is. And she asks him if he's lost, and he says yes, and she says she's lost too, but she's looking for a baby. So then we cut to Bird and Mary are in this house, and it's been snowing in there, and it's dark in there because the snow is around the house like a fist. And they have enough food, and they have snow for water, and Mary doesn't want to cook or anything, and Bird is practicing shooting, but he's not using the bullets because he doesn't want to use them all up. So Mary is reading him adventure magazines, which she doesn't much like either. And he says to her, not all men are like that. And she's like, you don't know all men. And he says, well, not all women are like that. And she's like, well, okay, I'll give you that. She asks him not to go up the stairs, I think because it's dangerous. And they think about how they'll get out. And I'm trying to remember what happens right after that. I think we cut to Brooke again. Who knows? Brooke is hanging out with this woman, and at night he sleeps on parts of her, like he puts his head on her thigh, or he'll put his head on her arm, or maybe he'll put his leg on her leg if she's asleep, but if she moves or talks, he moves his leg. And at some point, they're hanging out and they're looking at the stars. Oh, I know what happened. Sorry, let's go back to Bird and Mary. The snow eventually starts to melt. And there's like canals in the snow in the yard. And they're starting to be able to see through the top windows. They're starting to be able to see in the trees and everything. And they're plotting their escape. And they're thinking about how they're going to get out. And so then we cut to Brooke. He's hanging out with this woman. And at some point at night, he starts touching her in her leggings. And she doesn't seem to do anything. She just looks up in the stars. But when he wakes up in the morning, she's gone. And so he leaves, and he sees that the snow has been melting, and he thinks it's because of her. He thinks all of the weather is related to her. So he goes out, and there's this band of people in wagons. It's 4 men and 2 women. There's Dorothy, who talks with a slant, and there's Irene, who's muddy. And then there's Wendell, who's like the ringleader of it all. And he thinks maybe Irene is Wendell's daughter. They don't seem to be banging or anything. So he goes there and they're like, you must be John. And he's like, yeah, I'm John. They're like, well, we have your wife. She's sick. She keeps talking about a baby. And so he's like, we'll stay with you guys if you don't mind. And he's talking to Irene. They're talking about Dorothy, the one who runs after rags and stuff. She'll like, a rag will get caught in the wind and she'll go and chase it. And they're talking about she lost a baby too. So then they're happy to let him follow along with them for as long as he wants. He falls asleep with Irene. And at night she starts talking and she's like, I did with it what I had to do. And he says, in the ground, or the earth, what the earth told you to do. So they have this sort of sleep conversation that is almost like a poem. And she said it wouldn't stop screaming until I put it down. And he said when it stopped, it stopped. And then she starts crying. And then they wake up in the morning, and they're talking about where they're going to be going, and that he can stay as long as he wants. And he said, I'll leave at the next town. And Irene says, Haints Stay when and where they will. And then we cut back to Bird and Mary. And they're getting out of there because the snow's all melting. And they see all these dead bodies everywhere. And Bird keeps trying to move them and touch them, but they keep cracking. And Mary tells them not to do that. So they're going away. And Bird's still exploring. He finds 2 children in the basement dead. And he doesn't tell Mary about that. And then they go into the woods.
The woods. Terrible time. 4 days. 4 days. They're going through the woods. And one thing you gotta know about Mary, she does not give one fig for this one-armed avian MF she's been hanging out with. He's terrible. He's a brute. He's stupid. She doesn't want to be around him. He's a means to an end. They're carrying these sacks full of bread. Of course, she's got to carry the lion's share because she's got 2 arms. You know, the lady carrying more than the man. Not okay. They make their way, like I said, 4 days to a clearing. 5th day, they find a farm. A little farm. Ponies. Mary is intrigued. She wants to pet the ponies. So she runs out, she goes pet the ponies. Meanwhile, this douche she's been hanging out with goes over to the barn, finds a little girl, puts a gun in her face. She's just trying to pet a cat. What's wrong with this guy? Her father comes out like, whoa, man, what, are you here to rob us or hurt us? He's like, nah, man, I won't eat. He's like, it's fine, just put the gun down. Like, this is unreasonable. It's an unreasonable way to be. You can stay at the place. We'll get you to town in the morning. Fine. Cut back over to Brooke. Brooke's hanging out with this caravan. This caravan. Now, I've heard all these stories now. Brooke seems like the worst. But let me tell you my impression of Brooke. Don't you call him lazy, and don't you call him stingy. Because this man works hard. He feeds his new wife, Irene. And then he gives the food that's left over away to other people. This is great. Like, this guy's awesome. Then they go out. He goes out with some of the other men. They find a stagecoach. It had been transporting gold. And they go find some caves, has some water in it. Some yellow water. That's okay. You get it strained out. It's fine. It's fine. A little bit of diarrhea, and a day later, you're good. Then he goes back to the camp with this water. Irene looks at him and says, John? No, you're not John. I don't know you. And he's like, whoa, no, I'm not John. But you saved my life. It's like, all right, yeah, I remember this now. Yeah, I remember this. Like, you're a good man, right? And he's like, yeah, I'm a good man. She's like, are you sure? You done some bad stuff, haven't you? He says, yeah, I have. She's like, well, you're not gonna do any bad stuff to me, right? He said, no, make sure it stays that way. Cut back to Mary. And this terrible human she's hanging out with. They stay there for a few days and taking this hospitality from this farmer and his daughter. They end up riding him into town. Center of town, there's a stairway. Goes all the way up and stops. Looks like you can walk right to heaven. Then two men roll out of a bar in a brawl, just straight up fighting. And Bird's just like, oh yeah, no, I'm gonna go break this up, because, I have a gun. So he goes over, asks one of the bystanders, like, hey, which one of these dudes is richer? That guy.
Richard?
Richer. Oh. Has more money. So that guy down on the ground. So he goes, guy that's got him, puts the gun to his head and says, hey mister, you want me to blow his brains out for $500? Guy on the floor says, yup. Boom.
Whoa.
Lays him out. Says, give me $500. Dude's like, no, I'm gonna give you $200. Bird's like, no, that wasn't the deal. He's like, wait, do you have a horse? Guy's like, I've got a mule. I'll take $200 in a mule. Rich guy's like, I like a reasonable man. Mary, in the meantime, she hates violence. She just doesn't like it. She gets queasy. So she goes over to the post office, talks to the man at the post office. She looks haggard. I mean, she's starving. And he says, I know somewhere you can get a cheap meal. And she's like, I can't even afford that. It's like, well, I'll tell you what. You come back with me. You'll meet my wife. You'll eat for free with us. So they go in. Wife starts needling her, picking her brain. Where are you from? Who are your parents? Which dad do? Well, my dad's dead. My mom is in the woods, and the postman's like, yo, stop, just let her eat.
I get the sense that maybe Mary was in the wrong book, if she does not like the violence. Just so I do not forget it, Bird comes looking for Mary all throughout my section, and people keep saying she's not here. So Mary's not really in my section, because she seems to be avoiding being dragged into this, into these troubles. This is mostly a Bird section. So Bird is now a killer, I guess. He seems pretty enthusiastic about this. And so he goes, I believe, into the bar. He meets a gentleman named Ramon. Ramon befriends him, and Ramon seems to be a pretty cool guy. Ramon actually seems to be a master of the art of seduction, from what I could tell. So Bird, who's now killed a man, also partakes of his first strong drink this evening. Speaks about being a killer, being a hand with a gun. At some point, I think he claims he's killed 100, maybe 200 people. But I'm getting the sense that is maybe not correct, not quite an accurate accounting. But he is very excited about the idea of killing more people, potentially. Ramon gives him like another whiskey at some point, I think, and a little fondle on his missing part, which I thought was a whole arm. I don't know if he's lost more than the hand at this point, but he's definitely missing some parts. gets a little rub on the stump. Not excited about that. Speaks his feelings for a moment, but they're still kind of cool. But he decides to spend the night sort of chilling next to a fountain with a cocked gun in his lap. And that night sort of passes relatively uneventfully compared to everything else that's happened. We jump over to the Brook party with Wendell. They roll up on this town named, I believe, Wolf Creek. This might be the town from earlier, or there are other towns filled with dead people. Haven't heard this name yet, not sure what to think. But they're like, oh, a town with a bunch of dead people on display. So they fire off their guns, as one would. They shout, we're coming in, we're here to be peaceful, solid citizens of Wolf Creek. But I think everyone in Wolf Creek is dead, which they realize after kind of poking around. So they get rid of those bodies. And it seems like actually a pretty nice place. They kind of settle in. Brooke's got, I guess, a wife at this point.
What?
It's over here on this side of the semicircle, Brooke seems like a pretty chill dude. He's hard-working man. They pick a little farmhouse out on the edge of town. It's got a fence. They're gonna maybe keep some horses and hogs. And whoever they came in with, they're just sort of repopulating this town from scratch. They're going to change the name from Wolf Creek to Wendelltown. And it seems like, I think this part just kind of smooths on out to the end. At some point, a lone rider comes in, but I think it's going to be okay. We cut back to Bird. Bird has made it through the night unbothered with his gun, but he's chilly. He's invited into the bathhouse of a mission to meet the boss. The boss, as Colin informed you, know is the boss because he's a tiny man behind an enormous desk, which is the clearest sign of bossdom. He also, importantly, has a mean minion who has a top hat in this world. And Bird comes in, he makes it clear he wants to be hired. He wants to be hired as a killer. He wants to, because he's killed like 1 million dudes at this point, obviously, which is apparently not so. But he makes it clear he wants to be hired as a killer, but he wants to have control over the jobs he takes. He's clearly a very just young fellow, and only wants to kill evil men, like apparently that dude in the street was. He's taken in, meets the boss. Everyone wants to know if he's a friend of Ramon. Ramon's the guy to know. And the dude in the top hat gives him the top hat. The boss is like, oh, I like your top hat. I'm gonna hire you. And he's part of the crew. There's a whole crew hanging out in the bathhouse, hanging out on the mission. He's one of the gang. He is hired specifically for $200, because that's his going rate, to kill the dudes who busted the nose of the man who once had a top hat, which is a terrible thing to do. I assume that's the end of the book.
So we'll just go back around one more time, see what else we remember, and then you go, I'll go home. No, thank you all for coming. That was Haints Stay. You don't have to buy anything because you just heard the whole book. Thank you. Good night.